Modern China considers itself a socialist republic, but as I mentioned in my previous video titled China is not a socialist country, China is not a socialist state. This is because Chinese workers don't directly control the means of production in China. Instead, private ownership over the means of production is prevalent. For China to genuinely be a socialist nation, Chinese workers would need to have democratic control of the entire government and the means of production. This would require them to control factories, machinery, tools, and raw materials. Private property ownership would also need to end, and production for profit would need to be replaced with democratic planning. The wage system of capitalism would need to be abolished. In modern China, the government isn't democratic and workers don't run the state or economy democratically. Instead, the Communist Party rules over the nation, effectively becoming the new bourgeoisie. However, what if things were different? What if China adopted a system of democratic socialism? After 1927, a small number of Chinese communists, including Chen Duqiu, aligned themselves with Trotsky's left opposition. However, they were expelled from the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, and subsequently formed separate Trotskyist groups. The movement remained small and was marginalized due to the Stalin-controlled Communist International, Kuomintang, over the CCP, and later due to the CCP's consolidation of power. We are not going to transform the Chinese Communist Party. However, we must ensure that Chiang Kai-shek never gains power, as he started the infamous Shanghai massacre, which led to the deaths of thousands of communists. This brutal event, which Chiang did not need to initiate, actually backfired, ultimately resulting in civil war, which he would eventually lose. In order to prevent Chiang Kai-shek from rising to power, we need to ensure that Sun Yat-sen does not put him in charge of the Whampoa Military Academy. This would prevent Chiang from building loyalty within the military and consequently seizing control of the KMT after the death of Sun Yat-sen. Ideally, for China to become a democratic socialist nation, a leader would have to be found that does not repeat the mistakes of the past. Such a leader would have to maintain cooperation between the KMT and the CCP, ultimately leading to the formation of a democratic government through a unity between the two parties. Liao Zhongkai would be an ideal figure to lead the KMT in this scenario. In real life, Liao was a major leader of the left wing of the KMT alongside Wang Jingwei, who is well known. Liao had great political influence, having been a member of the executive committee of the Kuomintang. However, despite this, Liao lacked the support of the military, which was crucial in determining who would take power. In this alternate timeline, Liao Zhongkai avoids the assassination attempt as he walks in a different direction and avoids the gunmen sent by Hu Hanmin. This fortunate turn of events allows Liao to continue his political career, shaping the destiny of the KMT and potentially influencing the course of Chinese history. Under this alternate timeline, Sun Yat-sen publicly supports Liao Zhongkai, naming him his successor in the KMT. Sun Yat-sen also decides to appoint Wang Jingwei to lead Whampoa instead of Chiang Kai-shek. Given that both Wang Jingwei and Liao Zhongkai are left-winged, there would be less friction, and Wang Jingwei is unlikely to overthrow Liao Zhongkai. Wang Jingwei, who relies on a group of military generals instead of a single commander. The northern expedition still occurs in this timeline, but with a slower pace. A significant deviation from history is the longevity of the First United Front, suggesting a more sustained alliance between the KMT and CCP. In our timeline, Wang Jingwei betrayed China and sided with Japan during World War II. This betrayal was the result of various factors, including the heavy casualties China faced during the war, tensions between Chiang Kai-shek and Wang Jingwei, and Chiang Kai-shek's focus on the Chinese Communist Party at the start of the war, leaving China more vulnerable to Japanese attack. Wang Jingwei believed that surrendering early to Japan would allow China to retain some autonomy and avoid further suffering. In this alternate reality, the First United Front remains unbroken, with the KMT and CCP working collaboratively rather than against each other. This alignment allows for increased resource allocation towards combating Japan, with greater logistical support from the peasants. The absence of infighting and distractions due to suppressed political rivals contributes to a stronger unified front against foreign threats. This alternate timeline presents a changed dynamic in the war against Japan, with a stronger unified resistance emerging to challenge Japanese advances. In this period between 1941 and 1943, Japanese supply lines faced increased strain due to a more coordinated resistance. Additionally, rural areas within KMT control witnessed a reduction in civilian casualties, as internal purges of the KMT have been avoided. This alternate history scenario portrays a significant change during the latter part of the war from 1943 to 1945, with intensified resistance both guerrilla and conventional. Additionally, the presence of stronger coordination with Allied aid and the absence of the 1938 Yellow River flood as a result of Wang's strategic decisions to deploy troops and guerrilla forces instead of destroying farmland and cities contributes to a more favorable outcome. This divergent path by Wang's priorities and the concern of the CCP and Liao for peasant support leads to fewer civilian casualties and a less devastating impact on the countryside. In this alternate reality, it is worth noting that the Chinese Communist Party still exists, with its presence still prominent within the KMT. However, it is also possible to introduce changes to weaken the influence of the Soviet Union in this timeline. In this alternative timeline, we can prolong the Russian Civil War by having Britain, France, and Japan provide slightly more support than historically, but not enough to secure a victory for the anti-Bolshevik forces. This means the war prolongs until 1927, with additional factors contributing to the extended conflict. The Tambov Rebellion also sees a longer duration in this scenario, and there are more peasant rebellions during the same period. Despite these challenges, the Red Army ultimately emerges victorious, but a prolonged civil war weakens the newly established Bolshevik government. With a delayed conclusion to the Russian Civil War, the influence and control of the Soviet Union over Mongolia and Tuva would be weakened. In this alternate history timeline, China seizes this opportunity, gains control of both Mongolia and Tuva. From 1945 to 1957, Liao Zhongkai leads China under a socialist-leaning government. While Liao holds executive authority, the CCP and other left nationalist elements wield significant influence in ministries and local governments. Liao's administration prioritizes policies such as land reform, industrial development, labor rights, and universal education. This China maintains a relationship with the Soviet Union but retaining its own identity. There is also a focus on national infrastructure projects, including rebuilding railroads, irrigation systems, and power plants. This alternate timeline presents a more gradual approach to land reform. With the CCP still having a presence within the government, the land reform process unfolds more cautiously. Peasants receive small plots of land, and rent caps are implemented. Additionally, there is a strong emphasis on cooperative farming, as is actively encouraged to promote a more equitable distribution of resources within this socialist-leaning regime. In this scenario, industrialization takes place with an emphasis on key strategic industries including steel, railways, and electricity generation. Literacy campaigns are expanded nationally, driving a rapid growth in compulsory education, especially in rural areas. There is a noticeable improvement in civil liberties compared to times under Mao, with women gaining increased access to education, employment opportunities, and expanding voting rights. Urban areas experience rapid modernization, while rural regions benefit from state-assisted investments in irrigation and mechanization. Gradually, migration from countryside to cities sees a slow but steady rise. In this alternate timeline, Taiwan is returned to China after World War II, with Japan transferring ownership to the Chinese government. The absence of a Chinese civil war means that Taiwan does not fall under the control of the KMT and the mainland under the Communist Party. In the later years of Liao Zhongkai's rule, a process of democratization unfolds, allowing for greater worker control over the workplace and fostering a more diverse political landscape. The KMT-CCP alliance persists, but smaller parties are allowed to operate within the government. Local governments in provinces and cities gain genuine decision-making authority, while central authorities set up structures for peaceful succession. Lao maintains strong leadership at the national level but establishes mechanisms for transitioning power smoothly. In this alternate timeline, workplaces including factories, farms, and larger enterprises begin the process of electing managers or councils, with workers actively participating in decisions regarding production, wages, and workplace rules. The central government establishes broad economic objectives, such as industrialization, electrification, and infrastructure development. The land reform process progresses and peasants gain ownership or obtain long-term leases for their plots. Agricultural collectives persist but are managed democratically, reflecting the democratic principles adopted across various aspects of society. Enterprises distribute profits among workers, fostering a hybrid economy that combines state planning with workplace democracy, creating a system that resembles Western socialist experiments more than the historical Maoist People's Republic of China. Worker morale improves, leading to fewer strikes and uprisings. Education and social programs are expanded, with particular emphasis on empowering women and rural populations. Civic and technical education focuses on promoting participation in local decision-making processes, and workers and peasants gain a genuine voice in governance. Rural areas witness more equitable investment, leading to a reduction in urban-rural tensions. In this alternate timeline, after the passing of Liao Zhongkai in 1957, a left-leaning KMT figure like Wang Shoudao assumes power for a term of 8 years, spanning from 1957 to 1965. Following this period, China experiences a democratic transition, with 7 different presidents assuming power through a parliamentary process. In this alternate timeline, China emerges as a democratic socialist global power by 2026, having bypassed the Maoist era of the People's Republic of China. China's rise is accelerated due to the absence of the Maoist rule, and the country establishes itself as a dominant player in the global stage, driven by democratic socialist values and principles. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.